Okay. Today we're talking about shavers. So let me just introduce you in case just some details. Torah says there's certain parts of your beard you're not allowed to cut, and there's all kinds of criteria which we'll talk about right now about what kind of cutting you are or not allowed to do, and before I get to those details of what you are or not allowed to do, I'm going to describe to you what an electric shaver does. That's what we're talking about, electric shavers, of course. What an electric shaver does as compared to a razor. So, a razor is just a blade, a very thin, sharp blade, and you just cut it, you run it on your face and it cuts your hair. About 100, 150 years ago, two different inventions happened to solve a problem with razors. And that is, when you use a razor, you take a good chance of cutting your face. You put in this really sharp blade on your face. Okay, so two inventions came up. And the first one was called the safety razor, which is it puts the blade into a specific device. And by putting the blade in this special device, you can cut, and you dramatically cut down the possibility that you're going to cut your skin. Okay, that was the safety razor. I'm mentioning it because it'll come up again soon. And the other is the electric razor, which is electric shave, which is what we're talking about. And it, can cut your beard without cutting your skin, because it has a shield. The blade there's something in between the cutting blade and the face. There's a shield in between them. So basically, it's almost impossible to cut your face with. In that shield has these very small holes in it. The small holes are large enough that your facial hair could fit through, but presumably not enough to get your skin through, and therefore it cuts the hair without cutting your skin. Okay, so exactly how it works is what we're going to talk about. Exactly how it works in Yanenu, we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so what are the dinim? The Torah says, the Gemara says, you can't cut your payas with anything. Okay, to a certain size, you can't cut them with anything. It makes no difference. But for your beard, you're allowed to cut them with a misprayim, with the scissors, but not with a tar or razor. Okay, and then the Gemara, in a different way of talking about it, says there's something else called misprayim kein tar, a scissor that cuts like a razor. Okay, which we'll find out what that means in a minute. And you could use that on your beard. Okay, you're allowed to use it on your beard. Okay, so and we know this because the Torah says Loisashkas es pasuk anecha, and there's another pasuk that says pasuk onim loik alechu. So when it says Loisashkas es pasuk anecha, we learn out from there that you're not allowed to. You can the only type of cutting of your beard that you're not allowed to do is one that's mashchas, and that's only for a tar, not for a misprayim, and not misprayim kein tar. Okay, so we need to understand the difference between them, and you'll see we're going to talk about what's the difference between them to understand where the shaver or electric shaver fits into them. Okay, so the simplest difference between a razor and a scissor is that a razor has just one razor, it just cuts by itself, and the scissor cuts the hair by squeezing the hair in between the two blades. Okay, I brought a scissor. Okay, so it doesn't cut. None of the blades cut by themselves. Okay, but what happens is when you put something in between them, the pushing between the two parts is what cuts the hair. Okay, so that's the simplest difference between them. Okay, so that it's not mashkas. That's not able to be mashkas, and therefore it's mutter. There's another thing not relevant to us, not relevant to today, and that is because it says opas is going to like alechu. It's only if you do it through giluach, but if you use cream, which in fact there are people who still do it, if you use creams to get it off, that's not giluach. It's not through a cutting motion. Scissors are cutting, but they're not mashkas. But if you use this cream, it doesn't cut at all. So then that's also mutter. Not relevant to today. It's only relevant today because the people who won't use electric shavers use cream if they want to get rid of their beards. Okay, that's only people who it's relevant to. Okay, so what's the misprayim kein tar? Where does that fit? Misprayim kein tar. It's a scissor. It sounds like it has two parts to it, but it's kein tar. So what does that mean? What's the misprayim that's kein tar that you're allowed to use that? Okay, so to me it appears that there are two main explanations for what misprayim kein tar, in essence, what a tar means at all, and those two have two subcategories to them. Okay, so we're going to end up with four different shittas about how deal with this, and then between them will help us figure out whether you're allowed to use a shaver or not. Okay, 4 different ways of looking at this. 2 real opinions and then 2 branches off of those like this. Okay, so the first is the most machmer, and that comes from several Israeli poskim. My names that I have here, Dayan Weiss said this, and Rav Wosner said this. Supposedly Baron Cutler held like this, and they say that the Chazon Ish held like that also. Okay, I'm going to get in 1 second to another famous person who you might know about. Okay, and they say it's like this. The difference is how close of a shave it makes. Okay, a tar makes a very close shave, and a misprayim does not make a close shave. I mean, how close could it be? You have a scissors. I mean, how close could it get when you have the second blade against your face? I mean, how close? Oops, sorry, I almost cut myself. How much could it cut if it has a second blade in between? Okay, so what's a misprayim ke'entar? Misprayim ke'entar means it cuts close to like what a scissor does, close to what a tar does, but still not as good as that. But if it cuts really good, then no matter what, it's going to be awesome. And memela, an electric shaver, which cuts, give or take, as good, and they're looking at it, cuts just as well as a razor does, and therefore that's not misprayim kein tar. That's mamash tar. What do you mean it's mamash tar?
I take a misprayim and make it so thin that it cuts so close. So that's awesome.
That's misprayim kein tar.
Oh, that's misprayim.
What do you mean? Well, what does it mean? What is a misprayim kein tar?
I'm cutting with a misprayim, just it's very, very, very thin.
That's exactly misprayim kein tar. That's what you just described. That's what I call it. It's misprayim kein tar. It does as good as a tar. But they say, but this is beyond that. That would be mutter. They say, but a shaver is beyond that. It's like beyond when anyone could have dreamt that. That's mamash tar. And they say like this. They say it doesn't say in the Torah you can't shave with a tar. We don't have to find a criteria of tar. The criteria in the Torah is if she mashches. So mashches, tar is in their way of saying a tar was the thing that's mashches. It cuts all here down to the base, mamash till there's nothing left. That's why
would cream be fun?
Because it's not megalech. It's not because of mashches. It's because it's not megalech. It is mashches, but it's not megalech. There's no cutting motion. It disintegrates. It's some other way, you know. So they said there's no Torah doesn't say anything about scissors. It says you're not allowed to use something that's mashches. So in them, the way they looked at it, a blade is what's mashches, and a scissor can't be. And if you had a scissor that's a really good scissor, even for them, their best scissor still wasn't mashches. They said they were being magdir. But we made this super duper scissor that could be mashches, so then fine. Mashches is mashches. That's what it counts as.
How can it be worse than misprayim kein tar?
Because
he's saying it's also. He's saying if you have a misprayim, plain on misprayim.
Misprayim kein tar is mutter.
Right, but
not if it cut really, really close.
But not if it cut this close.
Kein tar means it's like a tar, meaning but not
It's
so
close.
much like a tar.
Correct.
It's a misprayim that cuts.
In other words, like this. With this scissor.
If you have a misprayim.
With this scissor, you can't get anywhere near what a tar does. Okay, with this scissor. If you had a finer scissor, you can get a little bit closer. And that's like one of the things. That's what's mutter. But they're saying, but this is even beyond that. This is way beyond that, and this is super duper, and it's awesome. Okay, so. Okay, so according to this way of looking at it, you can't shave with any electric shaver. Any modern electric shaver is out. Now, they suggest that the Chofetz Chaim held like this also. Okay, so and comes from a diak from some words that it says in Likutei halachos. The Chofetz Chaim brings this, says something about this. It's on the bottom, not even the main part of the Likutei halachos. It's on the bottom, like a footnote on the bottom, and they want to read into it that it says in there that this mashinka hachadasha. You can't use. So there's several questions. Diukim to think that he does not mean shaver. I'm not going to tell you them. Okay, several diukim to think that what he says, the way he talks about it, does not say shaver. But the most straightforward,
what would it be?
Correct. The most obvious is because it was printed in 1920. And shavers didn't become. I can't say there weren't any, but the real shavers became public in the 1930s.
What machine came out in the?
What came out is what I told you beforehand, and that was safety razors. Okay, and safety razors are what came out. In fact, and there was
it's not a machine kit.
And there was a person named Reb Chaim Hershenson, okay, who wrote a tshuva to say that you're allowed to use safety razors. You're allowed to shave with the safety razors. Because he said it's like a rehitni, and the Chofetz Chaim is talking about on the Rashi of a rehitni and like that, and he says no, it's not that thing. It sounds like that's what he's talking about, and the Yiddish or German word they use also sounds like that. So there's a bunch of reasons to think that he's
What's the Mashinka about that?
What's the word?
who uses Mashinka
No,
Hachadasha.
he says a 2 or 3 letter word.
An owl.
It had electric
Oh,
power.
it's just a razor?
Okay, so
Small
an awl is a German. Technically, it's a German word that means, like in English, eel. It's the same word as eel, but it also used to refer to things that are long and thin. So the theory is that he's referring to think about what a safety razor looks like versus long handle.
Do we think the Philistines sold the word machine exists?
True. It sounds like from just the way he's writing about it, he's writing on that Rashi hit me that he's like as if referring back to him. He says, "Don't plug what those people." I don't know if you said what people says.
Because people use shavers the claw. I mean, it's not like they don't need, even without a hedger. Those days, a lot of people were using shavers.
We're using you don't mean shavers, you mean razors. But then he wouldn't call them a shinka chadasha. What's nothing new about that? That razor's been around for a million years. What was he describing? He was something new that came out in 1900.
It sounds like that people thought it was mutter.
Right, there was something that he was saying. People are thinking you could use the new thing. The old thing, of course, we know you're not allowed and didn't allow to use. People think you could use the new thing, and I'm telling you, no, you can't allow to use that. Okay, whether that isn't, I'm not sure. It could be sure that not so. Seemingly, it's not talking about electric shavers. Okay. So now that was I told you the most chomer shita. Okay, the most mako shita is from Rav Henkin and out of left field from Kosher Rebbe. Okay, you wouldn't have thought you wouldn't think he'd be on this side of the fence. He'd be the most mako. Go figure. But not what you were hoping for. And he says the difference between a misprayim and a tar is whether it touches your face. Does the cutting blade touch your face? So in a tar, the cutting blade touches your face. Misprayim, it doesn't touch your face. It doesn't touch your face because what cuts is the part. This is the part, so to speak. The lower blade is on your face. The upper blade is one that comes across it and cuts with it. And therefore, since it's not touching your face, it can never be usher. And according to that, every electric shaver is okay because the whole point of electric shaver is it has this it has a shield, a guard. I don't know what you want to call it. It's in between. What do you say?
A new one blade from.
One blade also has something in between. Of course it does. Yeah, of course it does. Yes, it has it's still a guard. What the cutting thing is on top of that. Yeah, I taken them apart. Okay, so and Rabbi first says that Ramosh Halagados. Okay, other people think differently. I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, he'll be in Shita number 4. Okay, but first says that's Rabbi first. So they're all mutter. Okay, so now there's something interesting from Shlem Zaman,
including the listen.
Everything according to what B is everything is okay. Everything there's always something in between. Okay, now there's something from Shlem Zaman. This is one of those we don't know what to make of this. There's 2 versions of the Mincha Shlomo Beis and Gimel. Okay, so the interesting thing is that only appeared in one of those versions, but not in the other one. This is one of them. Yes, whatever that means. So some things that appeared in one, but not in the other one. And in one of the things that appears in the
original one,
in the earlier one, the red one, not the black one, is the following. He declares. He doesn't say what he thinks. He doesn't give a maskana. He says what he declares. He says like this. He says he etzim holds like the first opinion that I told you, the most chomer that says if it cuts like a tar, it makes a difference how many pieces there are on this and that. If it cuts like a tar, it's also okay as long as it makes a good cut. But he declares like this. He says, how is it that electric shaver could cut so close? How does it do such a great job that this scissor can't do? He says this. So what's going on is that it's yanking the hair out of the skin. It's pulling it from its roots beyond where it's supposed to be, and then cutting it. So even though there's a shield in between, but it's managing to cut, so to speak, below the shield. Because what it did was it pulled it. If I would put this against my skin, it can't cut below this line. But here it basically yanked the hair up above where it's supposed to be, so to speak, above the line of where the bottom blade is, where the shield is, and so when it's cutting above the, so to speak, above where it's supposed to be. So now think like this. The end result is that the hair is cut like a tar. Here it has hashchasa. When you look at the person's face after he shaved, there's no hair left. There's nothing left. It's just like a tar does. So the end result is like a tar. He says, but at the moment of cutting, it's not like a tar. At the moment of cutting, there's still pieces of hair below it. Just that those pieces are going to sink back into the skin. They were unnaturally pulled out of the skin. So the end result, when I'm finished shaving, at the end of the day, my face looks like I used a tar. But at the moment of cutting, I was not using a tar. At the moment of cutting, I was cutting with a piece of still hair below it. So that's he says is the clear whether he goes in theory that if you cut like a tar, it would be usher. But does the shaver, should we look at like a tar because that's the end result, or should we not look like a tar because when it cuts, it's not being mashas. There's still hair below it. There's still pieces below it that are not being cut.
Every electric shaver, do we know the reality if it's as effective as razors? Like the first sheet who says the electric shavers are a problem because they're doing the same thing as a razor. They're assuming that it does the same thing, but my experience is not how it's the same.
That's not as good of a cut.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm coming to it. Third sheet, and I'm giving on the second. The third sheet in a second. The first way of looking at it says is the amount that they're cutting, in their view, this is how they looked at it. They looked at people who are shaving. They said those people, it's as good as a razor. Okay, you could disagree. Other people think not like that.
Take a haircut. When you take a haircut, you do the back of your neck. You could feel the difference.
Okay, so I'm just saying how they looked at it. And Shamzan, now bring you Shamzan, just tell you to help you understand what his clarity between is.
He's describing that they're pulling out your hair. Like that's not how a shaver works. Unless
He's just assuming.
No, it's against the foil. It's pulling it up.
it pulls your hair. The foil.
So that's an assumption. He says, how could it manage to cut your skin down to nothing when there's a guard there? Lamaisa, there is a guard. So how come you aren't left with that much hair left? How much aren't left with that much hair?
Leave something there.
Okay, so we'll say different. So that's not how he's saying it. In his mind, it's being pulled to leave hair behind. Okay, so you get this. So you're on the censorship committee to take it out because he got it all wrong. Okay. Maybe that's why they took it out, right? Not because they didn't like what he said. Okay. So those are two extreme opinions. Either they're all fine or they're all no good. Okay, those are the two extremes. And then there's two in betweens, which are more American style. We compromise, we get along with everybody. We don't want to be so disagreement. Then you have two in between sheets. Okay, and the first is like this. The first is a modification of the Chomer Shita. Okay, and that said is what Allah is trying to say here. And it says it's true. If you're mashchis, it's usher. It makes a difference what you did it with. How you are mashchis. It makes a difference. If the end result is you are mashchis, it would be usher. But that's only true with some shavers. Some shavers do that and some don't. And specifically, the ones that do it are the infamous lift and cut shavers. Okay, and lift and cut shavers, because they lift and cut. First, they yank the hair, like I just described a second ago. They yank the hair out of the face, and therefore they can cut even lower. Those are the ones that are a tar, but the regular ones are not a tar. Okay, and here's
doing that under Rosh Hashanah?
What do you say?
If that's
no,
it's the same thing.
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah was explaining the tzad lahachmir and lahakel. They're just a modification of the machmir. They're saying the machmirim say all shavers are mashlis. They say not all shavers are mashlis. Their judgment is that what's left behind in a regular shaver, that's not a hashchasa. That's a judgment call. Okay, so here on the screen, the big scary monster is really just a lift and cut shaver, a blade from lift and cut shaver, and that is what a lift and cut means is that there's a regular blade. Okay, in this case, it's the one to the right. In each pair, it's the one to the right. That's the regular blade, and to the left of that is another device. I don't know what you call it. It's made of a softer metal. It's also at a steeper angle than the cutting blade. You could see it for yourself that it's at a steeper angle. And both of those features, because it's soft and because it's a softer metal and because it's at a bad angle for cutting, it doesn't cut. What happens is it pushes the hair. It holds. Just imagine it. If you imagine you went like this and you went up against the hair, it pushes. So it just pushes the hair. It doesn't cut the hair, even though the hair is banging up against the blade, right, against the shield. It's pushing against something, but it doesn't. All the lift part does is that it pushes it forward a little bit, effectively yanking it higher and pulling it out from the skin, and so that when the blade comes behind, the blade cuts it at a lower spot. Okay, that's what happens. Okay, so this is a lift and cut. You see, for each one of the blades, on the right side of each pair, each one of the blades has this lifting thing in front of it, which is pushing each hair. This spins around, a zillion miles an hour. So as it's going by, it pulls the hair out, drop, and the thing comes behind and cuts it. Okay.
It's not cutting like a razor. Cuts against something else.
There's a guard. There's a guard at the bottom. This is not on the face directly.
Right. The shield. The shield is underneath it.
Okay.
Okay. So the people who think like this, only the lift and cuts you're not allowed to use. So either they tell you. So the people who think like this will tell you either. Don't buy lift and cut shaver, okay? Or buy one and take it off. Okay, and I've seen people who've done that. Okay, literally go around and break off each one of those pieces, each one of the lifting blades, because there's 20 of them around the circle. So go around one by one and just knock them off. And what do you say?
On all three heads.
On all three heads, get to work, knock each one of them off. or just buy one without that, or buy one that doesn't have lift and cut. I'm sure there are ones, and that's this third shita. Okay, and then comes the fourth shita. The fourth shita, excuse me. Rabbi Heinemann says this is what Moshe held, not what Rabbi first says. This is what Moshe held, and that is like this. Really, they agreed to the most makel. The second approach I told you before. The second approach, which says is that if it doesn't touch the face, then it's the second said if it doesn't touch the face, it's for sure mutter. They say no. It's not whether it touches the face or not. What it depends on is can the blade cut by itself, or does it need somebody else to help him with the cutting? Okay, so in this scissor again, with a regular scissor, one blade by itself won't cut anything. It's only because there's counter pressure from the other blade pushing against it, as it squeezes in between, that's what does the cutting. So if a tar cuts without anything pushing back against it, there's no counter pressure. There is counter pressure from the skin, but there's no counter pressure from another blade. So that's what's usher. A scissor has counter pressure. So a shaver, it'll depend either if it has the counter pressure or it doesn't have it, whether that makes it a tar or not a tar.
Any shavers don't have counter pressure?
What do you say?
Any shavers don't have.
Well, all shavers have the counter pressure because the hair is stuck through the guard. So there's the other side of the guard that's holding it back. But the question they say is, would the blade cut by itself? Does it cut by itself before, so to speak, before the hair gets pushed back from the other side? Okay. This is the guard. Okay, it's sitting still. Okay, and the hair is stuck up in the middle of the guard. It's sticking up in here, waiting for the blade. And this is all a fraction of a second, but it's waiting for the blade. So if it could cut by itself before it pushes against here, then they say that's a tar. If it doesn't push until it hits against here, that's not a tar. Okay, so
it's a whole new lumdus because it's a whole different shot in misprayim.
It's correct. They're saying that misprayim it needs both blades. Not that there is two blades. It needs both blades to cut, as opposed to a tar doesn't need both blades. It cuts by itself. Okay, I'll give you a karta in 1 second. Okay, so
meaning let's say I would put something so that the tar wouldn't shave by the bottom. I would use the tar a little higher up. Drop higher up, a little higher up from the face. Would that be mutter or usher?
So it comes out a very funny thing. In theory, they're saying it would be usher, right? But which is ridiculous because you cut your beard 3 feet long and it could use a tar.
It has to be a shear.
What's a shear?
Whatever the shear is.
No, kedechis is for payas. So no, what if the whole criteria is does it cut by itself? So it's not why is not hashchasa? So that tells you that the criteria is not does it cut by itself because hashchasa doesn't get affected by that. I can put a 2 foot long hair and with one blade, and that's not with a one blade, with a tar, with a razor.
It has to be some sort of cane tar component to.
So then you're saying it has nothing to do with whether it cuts by itself. Why are you stuck on it cutting by itself when you're saying it has to do with hashchasa? So it's a funny.
The ingredient is it has to be the same effect as a shaver, as a razor, and then we could figure out if it has the same.
Okay, so you're reading two things into it.
You don't have the same.
Okay, so the people who do this do this famous test, rather unscientific test, which is they take a piece of here, they hold it between their fingers. Some people do it with 2 hands, some people do it with 1 hand, and they hold the finger and they see if the blade will cut. They try to push the blade and see if it cuts through.
Or the guard.
What do you say?
Or sometimes they check the guard to make sure the guard's not sharp.
I don't know that people do. It could be people do that. It could be. You stick the hair in,
and
then what do you do?
And then just slide the guard, I guess. Okay, so
it's metal, so technically, if it's like old, and it gets a little metal.
Okay, so the whole thing, this whole idea is very subjective, if I could use that word, because it's very much dependent on how tightly you hold it, how hard you push. And as if you push, it will eventually snap. The question is, at what point do you say, "No, I pushed it and it didn't, and it snapped by itself without my counter pressure"? And the tighter you hold it, the more counter pressure you're giving. So there's all kinds of. Everybody does it their own way. I watch different people do it. They all do their own way of how they think is the thing that tells me it's like this and like that. This is what they think. And some of the people who do this told me that they find the same brand won't always be the same. Sometimes the blade will be sharper or less sharp, which is, I guess, is not crazy. You know, company they're making blades. Maybe
somebody can take one of these little blades, whack it against the hair, and actually cut it.
Right. So some of them do it with 1 hand, some do it with 2 hands, and it'll cut it through. Yes.
They can actually do it.
Yes. Yeah. Now wait a second. You should just know with a challah for shchita, that's how sheikhtim check to see if the challah is sharp. What do you say?
No sheikhtim do that. Only Mahmoud does that.
No, of course they do. You have no sheikhtim who have no hair on their hands because they keep doing it all day long.
No, they do it on their skin.
No. They do it on their hair.
Not nowadays. Nowadays they'll do it on the skin.
Okay.
But Henry
No.
does it with the hair. He pulls the hair out of his beard. And
No, I'm not talking about. I'm talking about, look at a shechet's hand. So I have lots of here because I don't chef. So you look at it, and they go like this, they with nothing pressure against it, just a little piece of hair, so they go like that. So yeah, cut. Okay, my blade is sharp. You know. So the
Well, why should we believe that it's true that there's different blades have different things? Much more likely is that
they pushed it differently today versus yesterday.
If you were a little thinner.
If you're doing it a lot, you get used to the feel of
Yeah,
it.
but the companies who are manufacturing the blades do it even more.
It's not
They
controlled.
have
It's
manufacturing
One of these people is your
standards
friend. You know that.
tighter.
So anyhow, okay, we'll tell you later. Okay.
Let's say you use it for a couple of months and now it's dull. Now because motor.
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Some of them dull it down.
Okay. I'm coming to that in 1 second. I'm coming to that in a second. I'm coming to that in a
Dull
second.
it down.
So they'll tell you if you have a bad blade, if you have the blade that they didn't like, then you have to dull them. That's exactly what they'll tell you. Okay. So
When you dull it down, it's no longer a razor because it's actually going to have to use the shield.
Correct.
Second
But
hand.
So-
does it or
It's not
doesn't
just
it?
the dull
Okay,
blade.
How is
so-
the machine made?
okay.
The
So
machine made to push it to cut it with a
So
squeezing it.
I'm about to tell you. that. Okay. So in 1 second, I'll get to a riot to this, to whether there's a riot to this sheet of b'chal. Okay, but first I have to tell you, and I have to introduce this by telling you that there's somebody who you may know the name, Rabbi Chaim Jachter, and his son Binyamin, and the two of them together wrote a very interesting book about shaving and hair cutting and all kinds halachic wise, not about hairstyles, but all about halachas about hair cutting. It's called the halachic hair cutting book. And they know lots about this stuff, lots and lots about this. I had several dealings with them over the last summer, and they want to say it's like this. They want to say is this shita doesn't exist. Okay, it doesn't mean anything. He says there's no such thing, and every razor, every electric shaver cuts by hitting when the blade hits the other side. Okay, and there's no such thing as a shaver that the blade cuts by itself. They, in their book, have lots of proofs to it, some of which they couldn't put in, so they could only show you privately, and that's why I can't put it on here because I don't remember which were the things they said you're not allowed to show this to anybody. I don't remember anymore.
They can't show it because
The companies share the things with them that are proprietary that they can't show.
But they can show it to you.
So within their certain circle of people they could show it to, but not to be shown publicly.
We don't count.
What do you say?
We don't count.
You don't count. No.
Once you shut it, it's not public.
What do you
Once
say?
you shut the camera, it's not public.
Okay, so I would want to go past what they
how
said.
did they get? Why did the companies give it to them? What?
The company was talking to them about this din. They were very involved with these companies with understanding the din of it. I have to just explain to you. When you talk to the right person, this is someone who their whole life, literally, I don't have all the gory math to put up here. They live in this stuff. So they found someone who cares. They don't care that it's a rabbi. They don't care who it is. Somebody cares about this stuff that nobody in the world ever cares about. But I'm literally, you have to see the math. It looks like a mad professor. It's so someone cares about this. Wow, they're thrilled to talk to the guy about. Okay, this is the martial life. They live in this stuff. Okay, so they said, I'm going to tell you some of the reasons why they thought that this is correct, and reasons why I'm not convinced. I'm not going to tell you all the back and forth, just some of them. Okay. And the first is what I just said to you. They said the company who makes the biggest company, Philips, showed them their own mathematical calculations to tell you that it's physically impossible for the blade to cut by itself without the counter pressure from the shield below. Okay, it's impossible. They have all the math calculations. Okay, I have not a clue what the math said. They showed it to me. I don't think they understood it either. Long mathematical calculations about it. What kind of things? Oh my gosh, I don't remember what the words they use. Compliance and anchorage and all kinds of cheshbonos they have, and it's not possible.
So there's probably hundreds of different types of hair. So this is
And they know all about it. What's one of the tainas is that the people who do this test, who pull hair out of their head, hair of your head is thicker than hair in your beard, and therefore when you pull a hair out of your head, you're not going to get an accurate measurement to the hair of your beard.
Every hair can be different.
But they know. Wait a second. They know all about people's hair. They believe me, they know all about it. Okay, and they said is also the angle of the blade. Okay, this is the one thing I could check that I actually checked that the angle of the blade of the cutting blade is between 50 and 60 degrees, which is true. Okay, that I checked. I was able to do that myself. That's true. It's between 50 60 degrees. Come out always in shavers. It's not an angle that you can cut at. Okay, why I don't know. Why that I'm believing them. That's their chesed that you can't cut with a blade that's at that angle.
The people that are testing it are not testing it at that angle.
See it again?
The people that are putting in hairs and trying to cut it
No, instead of cutting it straight, they're like using like a knife. You know? They like a knife. Okay, so what's the response set? The response set is that, and they know about this. Whatever I said, it's not like I didn't tell them these things. They don't like what I said, but there's an article in Tchumen from Rabbi Yisrael Rosen. He's this kind of person. He tests these kind of things, and he said he shaved without the guard. Okay, they tried cutting beard here like that on a person without a guard on it and a cut. Okay, they took you can't do it. Your shaver won't work if you don't have the top on top of it. They tricked the machine and it cut. Okay, and they managed to cut. So they say you guys can make your math all day long, but the guy got stuff to cut. Okay, okay. Next is
who's that? Can't make a shaver a certain way. Doesn't mean it's not gonna cut a couple of hairs.
Say it again. No.
I can't construct a shaver like that because you can't put out a product that just is. But it doesn't mean it won't cut a few hairs here and there.
That's not. They didn't say it. The Phillips said is it won't cut anything.
It's very hard to believe.
So after you go through, get a whole degree in math and can follow what these guys are talking about, then you could argue. I can't argue on the math whether it's true. I'm just talking about the Matthias.
We have a very factual evidence otherwise.
Right. So that was my kind of back. I'm just telling you back. Okay, I'm not saying they didn't have responses back to what I'm saying. Okay, next.
What was the response back?
I don't. All the gory details I don't know. Next, the company Phillips made. This is for sure was a proprietary. A slow motion video of the shaver cutting actual cutting a person with the guard on a person's face. Okay, they made a slow motion video of that happening. What did you say? I don't remember if it was the guy. I think it was, but I don't remember. Okay.
This is not proprietary.
This is very proprietary. Yeah, this is for their own studying to know what happens when you cut what happens. Okay, and they said, and it showed that it only cuts when it hits the guard and the shield, the guard, whatever you call it, on the other side. Okay, it showed that when he did the video, it showed that it did that. Okay, so they said, so you see, that's what happens. Okay,
that time.
So well, the first thing before we get to that time is that I watched that video many times. Okay, it's not that long, and you can replay it again and again, and I thought that it cut before it hit the guard. and Rabbi, in Tchumen it says the same thing. In Tchumen it says, we watched a slow motion video of this stuff and we also thought, he tells you, it's in there, it's in footnote number 4. And he says, and it also cut before him. So we were a little surprised. And it doesn't mean, like you said, it doesn't mean it's going to happen every time, just because that handful of hairs was one thing, and I'm not sure how much we could prove anyhow from a slow motion video like that. You know what I mean? Especially you'll hear the right head second. Okay, next.
Phillips is not Masech Futumi anymore. They have enough people calling them. They know.
Well, I don't have a lot of people, but these guys, they know the Jack is what they wanted. That's for sure. Yes. No, but the video they didn't make for them. This is a video they made for their own internal.
Yeah, but what they told everyone they saw in the video.
No. They didn't. They told the Jack. The Jack just said what they saw in the video. They're reporting what they saw in the video. The company
wasn't from Phillips. That was from Jack. They're saying.
The Phillips made the video. Phillips made the video for their own reason, whatever cheshbonos they had. Okay, and last is they say if you look at the patents for all this for shavers, it tells you that it's going to cut with a scissor action. Okay, so my response to that is that first of all, it's true. Many of the patents say that. Some of the patents also say they're going to be razor sharp. Okay, so I don't know how much you want to read into the lashonos that guy used in this patent application, but I know. What type of right is that from the patent?
That's the general.
That's correct.
We're concerned with a little bit.
I'm asking. I'm good. I didn't get to that one yet, but yes, I'm asking that. But I'm just saying they're bringing it as a legacy. It says there's going to be a scissor. Also, you should know is what you mentioned before. That I said, how come it is that shaving companies tell you to replace your blades every so often? Okay, if you have a one blade, is that what it's called?
One blade.
One blade tells you replace it every 4 months. You have a regular shaver that tells you to replace it every 12 months or every 18 months. So what? Well, so I said, so why do they tell you to replace it? Obviously, because sharpness plays a role. It's not like it's just anything dull that will do it. The sharpness plays some kind of a role in here. It's not random, okay? And then Rabbi Holland from Star K showed it to them, and then I saw it as well. An article, some research paper talking about electric shavers. Which talks about that there are times when, depending on the person's skin, it could be their skin will end up passing through the shield also, which means is then the blade on the top is cutting all by itself. There's nothing there. It's acting like a plain razor to cut behind. That happens.
And it never cuts the skin?
No, it could cut the skin also then. That could happen by mistake. The guy's skin will get cut also. But the point, whatever, I don't remember what the point of the article was about, but from a magazine called Journal of Mechanical Behavior of Biomedical Materials, okay? So like really nerdy stuff. No, this is from 2015. You gotta look through your old issues. Okay. So now, so this is their big argument is that Shita number 4, which is that the depends on the sharpness of the blade is not physically possible. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist b'chlal, and this is the reason to disagree. So my last thing I have to tell you, which I think is important, but it's just not exactly related, and that is this shita that it depends on how sharp it is. L'chayra has a makar to it in the Trum Sedeshin. Okay, and that's because the Trum Sedeshin says that when you cut your beard with a scissor, he says you should make sure. Okay, you should make sure that the bottom blade, it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, you should make sure that the bottom blade is not too sharp. Because if the bottom blade is too sharp, then it could cut the hair by itself. And it'll cut the hair by itself, that'll be a tar. And it could be you have such a sharp bottom blade that the top blade is doing nothing. And basically the guy's just running over his face like this and it's just cutting away without any top blade playing a role. No, you see such a musag. No. They're saying which sheet?
Because they're saying
top blade.
according to them, you have a scissor, which all the patents for sure said that it was pressure.
It's not like who shita.
A rejector.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's a riot to this sheet. That's what I'm saying. It's a riot to the 4th shita, which says that sometimes the blade can be sharp. It looks like a scissor, but it's actually functioning as a tar. Because the tradition says, be worried that your bottom blade is so sharp that it might cut. It looks like a scissor, and the guy's going like this, and he's snipping away, but really the bottom blade is doing everything. Okay.
What does he specify the bottom blade?
So he says the bottom blade.
So the top blade was sharp enough.
So theoretically that could be right, but I thought what I don't know what you want to say, but I want you to want to say, and that is. On the other hand, the true position is talking about the bottom blade. Why is he only worried about the bottom blade? Why isn't he worried about the top blade? So that says to me not like this. That says to me is the bottom blade is the one that's on your face. That could be mamash like a razor. But if your bottom blade is not sharp, you do whatever you want on the top. That's the opposite deal, which is the top blade. Don't pay any attention to the top blade. Do whatever you want with the top blade, which is sort of like the most mako sheet, which is if you have 2 blades, if it's doing with a scissor action, and you need 2 blades to do it, then it's also. It doesn't make a difference if the top blade could theoretically do it by itself. Okay, that's a potential. So what would be potentially a right to this 4th shita is possibly the opposite. That is maybe a right to the opposite, a right to the second way, which is to say that it's all mutter, and life is great.